Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. My name is Jeremy Leffler. I work in the policy office here at NSF, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today, this afternoon's session. Before we get started, I just want to give you a couple of instructions on how to get the most out of this session. We are, if you're seeing us, if you're seeing this, you're seeing that we are broadcasting on the YouTube channel. And so what we're asking you to do is to submit your questions via the chat function on the YouTube channel, and we will be compiling all of those questions. We have a lot of people viewing the webcast today, so we may not be able to get to all of your questions, but we will be compiling them for a set of frequently asked questions that will be posted in the near future. If you're having technical issues, we ask that you please send an email to the address on the screen. And just so you do know, we are recording this session, and it will be posted at the website you see below and on the YouTube channel. So if some of your colleagues didn't get a chance to see it today, they will be able to see it in the future. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jean Feldman, head of the policy office.
Well, hello, everyone. As Jeremy mentioned, I'm Jean Feldman. I'm head of the policy office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at NSF, and we are delighted to have so many of you here with us today to go over the changes to the 2020 version of the NSF Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. So this is an important week here at NSF, and today and tomorrow we're holding a two-day symposium to celebrate NSF's 70th anniversary and 75 years since the publication of Science, the Endless Frontier, Vannevar Bush's monumental report marking the start of modern science policy. And this symposium will be just the start of a year-long program of events that are designed to highlight these momentous anniversaries. I would be remiss at the outset of this presentation if I did not recognize and give a big shout out to the fabulous team of individuals that make up the policy office here at NSF. Ann Doyle, Samantha Hunter, Paula Knox, Jeremy Leffler, and Beth Strauser. These individuals are involved in everything from policy, including your daily questions to policy@nsf.gov, to outreach, to clearance of all the NSF funding opportunities, and your colleague letters that go out on the street. These folks truly make it happen each and every day, and I want to recognize them for all that they do. So what are we going to cover today? Well, as I mentioned, this is about the PAP Guide, NSF 20-1. So we're going to really focus on its implementation. We are doing things a little different this year based on the content, and I'll be covering that. I'll also be going over significant changes and some of the important clarifications that I think are worth highlighting for all of you. As Jeremy mentioned, we will be permitting some time for Q&A. And again, if we don't get to all those, we will certainly be making sure that we get answers to those questions out to you as soon as we possibly can. So what are some key dates for the 2020 PAP Guide? Well, first of all, it was posted on the NSF website on January 24th, 2020. That in and of itself is a huge change, as if you, for those of you who know NSF well, and I've been doing PAP Guides, by the way, since 1992, and this is an important change from the way that we typically do things. We usually post the PAP Guide for public comment. We put on the NSF website the final version in October, and then we implement in January of the new fiscal year, or the new calendar year, and we've changed that this year. We have posted the document for the first time in January, and the reason for that is important for you to understand. NSF received a large number of comments in response to this PAP Guide, and we take those comments so seriously that it took us more time this year to ensure that we were able to fully consider and resolve all of the comments that we received. And I think for those of you who saw what was posted in 2019 as a draft, you will note that there are changes, and we hope that that recognizes the importance that we place on the input that you give us. This new 2020 PAP Guide 20-1 will be effective June 1st for all proposals submitted or due on or after that date. Let me say that again. Any proposal that's submitted or due on or after June 1st must comply with the requirements contained in this new version of the PAP Guide. We've received some comments already at policynsf.gov that seem to indicate some confusion with that, so we want to reiterate that and make that very clear as part of this presentation. Another change from how we currently do business is that we typically give you 90 full days to digest the changes, to get ready for the changes before we actually make the document effective. Well, we went a step further this year. Instead of 90 days, we're giving you 120 days. And I'm going to cover why that is so very, very important as part of this presentation. So, what are the 4 significant changes to the PAP Guide that I'd like to go over? Well, the first is government-wide proposal certifications. And if you deal with any other federal agency, you've already seen this guidance because it is a government-wide change, not simply an NSF change. And this section has been updated to implement an OMB memorandum, M1824, called Strategies to Reduce Grant Recipient Reporting Burden, dated September 5th, 2018. Organizations are responsible for maintaining the accuracy of their information in the System for Award Management, or SAM, and for utilizing SAM to submit all of your government-wide representations and certifications and to recertify those on an annual basis. So prior to submitting your proposal, all proposing organizations are required to have reviewed and certified compliance with these government-wide financial assistant representations and certifications that are maintained in SAM. And failure to comply with this will impact submission and processing of the proposal. So for those of you that know the NSF process, you say, well, wait a minute, but if I submit a proposal to NSF, I click one button and I submit and I essentially certify the proposal for submission to NSF. This is going to ensure you're doing it once on an annual basis across all federal agencies. And so while it may not seem like you're, for NSF proposals, saving a lot of time and energy, it is on an annual basis across all federal agencies. And so we do hope that that does result in some reduction in burden. That what it does not mean, though, is that you won't submit anything for NSF. When you submit the proposal to NSF, you will still be submitting NSF-specific proposal certifications, and you will see those on the screen, what they are at the time of submission. Again, important information. We also have made some changes to the rapid and eager proposal types. RAPID is short for Rapid Response Research Proposals, and EAGER stands for Early Concept Grants for Exploratory Research. Now, if you know our proposal process, you know that you were already required to contact your NSF program officer before you submitted either of those types of proposals to NSF. If you also know our proposal process, you know that you were already required when you submitted other proposal types to document that you had that discussion with your NSF program officer. So all that we are doing here is that we are requiring those concurrence letters as a supplementary document. We also, as part of these two sections of the proposal, have gone into more detail about what these proposals are for, and more specifically, what they're not to be used for. And I think this is extremely important because these are internally reviewed only proposals, and so it's important to understand before you've made that contact with your program officer to ensure that you've read those sections so that you know or feel comfortable that it meets the requirements of what that type of proposal is intended to do. And again, we've highlighted that in detail in each of those sections of the types of proposal section of the PAP guide. What many of you are actually here to hear more about, and we know that, are the next two significant changes. The biographical sketch. You are now required for any proposal submitted or due on or after June 1st to use an NSF approved format to generate the biographical sketch. Similarly, with current and pending support, we are requiring you to use an NSF approved format to generate current and pending support information. When you actually look at the electronic version of the PAP guide, you will see in each of these sections that we link to a page that goes through more information on what an NSF approved format is for each of these documents. And so it's important to note that for both of them, there are two approved formats. First of all, and we go into that on this screen, there is Science CV. NSF is partnering with NIH to use Science CV, which stands for Science Experts Network Curriculum Vitae, as an NSF approved format for use in preparation of the biographical sketch section of an NSF proposal. We also will be developing a second format for the biographical sketch, and that will be an NSF fillable PDF, and you note it says coming soon, and that will provide a fillable PDF that you could also use to meet this NSF requirement that you use an NSF approved format. We actually also, on this page for the biographical sketch, we want to continue to keep you informed as approved formats and related information become available. And so for both of these, current and pending support and the biographical sketch, we will, by the end of March, have all of the formats available for you to use. Again, you will not be required to use them, and NSF will not be compliance checking until June 1st. But why is it a mistake to wait until, right before June 1st? Because we want you to use these formats. We want you to kick the tires and tell us where you are having challenges or issues. That enables us and you to be most fully prepared for that June 1st date. So as you will note, we also have a companion page to current and pending support, as I've just mentioned. And both of you will note the same two systems or two approved formats will be out there, one in Science CV and an NSF fillable format. Again, please, it's vitally important that you continue to stay on top of looking at this page to see when these formats are available and to start using them. Again, even if they're not required to June 1st, don't wait until then to start trying these out. And if you find something, policy@nsf.gov, or on those, there's also on those pages of these systems going to be the ability to communicate with us as well. And we definitely want you to do that. and look forward to hearing what your comments are. So I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions about what we're already getting about NSF and Science CV, because we are at policy@nsf.gov, and as we do outreach sessions at COGR and FDP and Incura and SRA and all of the many other outreach we're doing, these are the questions we're already getting a lot. And so we thought it was worth it to spend time going over what those frequently asked questions that we're already getting are. Will non-compliant documents receive an error warning in both Fastlane and research.gov? Well, the answer is beginning June 1st, if you submit a document that is non-compliant, meaning you have not used one of the 2 NSF-approved formats, you will receive an error warning. Errors, as most of you know, are not good things. Errors mean you can't submit the proposal to NSF. So it's vitally, vitally important that you test these systems and know that beginning June 1st, the NSF systems will not permit you, and you will receive error warnings in both Fastlane and research.gov. Will Science CV link to NSF systems to retrieve the biographical sketch and current and pending support documents? It will not. You will save it as a PDF, and then you will attach it to the proposals that you're submitting in Fastlane, research.gov, or grants.gov. It is not actually communicating with that and actually submitting it within the Science CV system. You're saving it as a PDF, and then we'll be attaching it to the proposal you're preparing in grants.gov, Fastlane, or research.gov. Another question, will Science CV paginate both documents? It will. We have actually received the feedback on that very issue. Hey, I'm not seeing in the biographical sketch the ability, or Science CV is not actually paginating those documents. We're working it hard. We're working very hard and have weekly meetings with Science CV to go over those issues, to go over status, to go over outreach. And so we want to make sure you know that that issue is being worked. Is it permissible to save the documents in Word in order to edit the content and then create a new PDF? It is not. The bottom line is you need to use either the NSF template or format or Science CV. Believe it or not, we actually will know when you submit your proposal whether you're using one of the NSF approved formats. So once you start saving the document, even if you started generating it in Science CV and then said, oh, I just want to fix it and then remake it a new PDF, that's going to eliminate the information that makes it an NSF approved format. So please, these are important questions, and we thank you for asking them, and we will be resolving the issues that you bring forward to us. So stay tuned for more. There are a lot of resources already for Science CV, and we are continuing to work with NIH to enhance these resources and to do joint projects as well. And so on this page, you see that there's already some information out there. And we want you to know that, again, we are continuing to enhance and expand the resources that are available in Science CV regarding both the biographical sketch and current and pending support. So a big shout out to our colleagues at NIH in the Science CV who we are working with, and look forward to seeing more as time goes on and as we get closer to the June 1st date. I am now going to be spending some time going over some what we think are just clarifications that we would like to highlight for you. That does not mean this is the complete listing. In fact, if you go to the PAP guide, you will find the complete listing of clarifications, but we think it's worth letting folks know about these. For many, many years, NSF has had the ability to upload as a single copy document a list of reviewers that you would like to review the proposal. We've also given you the ability to identify individuals that you would prefer not to review your proposal. And in that section, we indicated that, or specified that you should indicate a reason why the proposer prefers that someone not review the proposal. Well, we have received some concerns about that. An individual does not feel comfortable identifying the reason. And so we agree. And so we have changed the PAP guide, and there is no longer the requirement to indicate why you would prefer they not review the proposal. And so that's an important clarification that we wanted to highlight for you. In the project description, when we put it out for comment, we identified that you also should be including a label for intellectual merit as a separate section in the narrative. And we would be compliance checking whether there was a label for both intellectual merit and broader impacts. We have removed that requirement to ensure consistent treatment across the foundation of whether there is that label there, and to ensure that it's, again, consistently treated across the foundation. Once we move to full proposal, all proposals submitted via research.gov, and no, we will not be identifying today a date when that will happen. We will likely make that a new requirement at that time, because then we will be able to ensure that all proposals will be consistently treated. The biographical sketch. We have always required that you identify your appointments, but we wanted to ensure that we were very clear about the fact that that included any titled academic, professional, or institutional position, whether or not remuneration is received. Some folks may have felt in the past that I'm not getting funding, it's an honorary position, it's a part-time position, whatever. We want to make sure that you understand that any titled academic, professional, or institutional position must be identified whether or not remuneration is received. Now, one of our favorite topics on policy at nsf.gov is synergistic activities. It doesn't matter how many times we clarify, we continue to get questions. So we have tried yet one more time to try to get this right for you. In the synergistic activities, and let's take a step back. Why are we asking, and what are we asking for about synergistic activities? Well, this list is intended to provide a demonstration of why the broader impact of the individual's professional and scholarly activities that focuses on the integration and transfer of knowledge as well as its creation is highlighted for that individual. This demonstrates why I'm doing these things, and we ask for 5 of those. And they have to be specific, and they may not include multiple examples to describe a singular activity. What we are trying to provide is 5 that demonstrate why and how the broader impacts focus on the integration and transfer as knowledge as well as its creation. And it's vitally important that you keep it to 5. And we don't want you to say, I do this, but guess what? As part of that same example, I do this and this and this and this and this. We're just trying to make it a level playing field, and we believe those 5 should be specific, and to ensure that, again, that it's a level playing field, that you only include those 5 examples. Oh, sorry. The budget and budget justification. Another favorite topic area on policy at nsf.gov. Participant support. We had language in the last version of the PAP guide where we talked about including conference rental fees, catering costs, supplies related to NSF-sponsored conferences on the other direct cost line of the budget. And then we went to the Incura Pre-Award Research Administrators Conference where we had a session on participant support. And we spent over an hour just talking about catering costs. And we realized, wow, we really didn't get that clear. So we wanted to clarify this language again. So what the language now states is that we've updated it to state that conference costs that are secured through a service agreement should be budgeted as other direct costs. What we're really trying to achieve here is that an institution that is using a service agreement or a contract is receiving the appropriate amount of indirect costs for those particular costs on the budget. Others have indicated that they're just using, for example, a purchase card or whatever, and those would be included under the participant support section. So again, we have really tried hard here to ensure that institutions, no matter what option they're selecting, are receiving the appropriate amount of indirect costs. Now, we have made another change to the budget and budget justification section that we want to highlight for you because NSF, to my knowledge, is the only and the first agency that has taken this step. So the section on publication, documentation, and dissemination costs has been updated. And in this section, we recognize 2 new types of dissemination costs or documentation costs that we believe you may be experiencing. And so we are recognizing those and allowing you to put this under the publication, documentation, and dissemination section of the budget. And they are as follows. Data deposit costs. Data deposit costs is a one-time charge that you pay at the time data is deposited in a data depository. And so we are recognizing that as a legitimate cost in this area. We're also recognizing a second kind of cost, data curation costs. And data curation costs are expenses associated with preparing data into a form that others can use. Again, people are asking questions about these, and it is very important for us at NSF in terms of this area to ensure that data is deposited in these depositories. And so we as an agency are recognizing those as costs that are allowable in this section of the budget. Now we're going to turn it over to probably what many of you are here to hear about, and that's the area of current and pending support. So let's start with the basics. What do we use current and pending support for? And if you really understand what we're using it for, some of the information and how we've included it in the PAP guide becomes clearer to you. We use current and pending support to assess the capacity of the individual to carry out their role in the project or the research as proposed. We also use this information to help assess any overlap or duplication with other projects. We're in the process of clearing a set of frequently asked questions that we're already receiving from the community regarding current and pending support, and we're working hard to get those out to you as soon as possible. But let's go over what it is that we are providing in this current and pending support section. So as we have done, and this is why we call it a clarification, because we have requested for many, many years that you identify all the current and pending support information that you receive. But clearly, individuals were not providing all of this to us. So we are clarifying that it's all current and pending support, irrespective of whether such support is provided through the proposing organization or directly to the individual. All that we have done to this section since 1992, which is when I arrived, is expand the examples. The section has always been all of your current and pending support. So again, if we go back to, well, I don't know that about a particular individual that is preparing this, and you're sitting in the sponsored projects office, NSF has to have this information and must know all of it if we can assess their capacity to carry out the information as proposed. If it is only one part of that, the part that goes through your organization, we cannot answer those important questions. We also expanded this information in an important way to talk about in-kind contributions. And in-kind contributions that are intended for use on the project or as proposal that are being proposed to NSF must be included as part of the facilities, equipment, and other resources section of the proposal. Now, why is it important for us to talk about that in this way? When we put this information out for public comment, we said that you include all in-kind contributions in current and pending support. The feedback that we received is, wait a minute, most of the in-kind contributions that an individual would be talking about relate to the project that's being proposed. And so that made sense to us. We already have a section of the proposal where you talk about all the facility, the equipment, and the resources that are available to this project. So we agreed with you. We have said, okay, you made sense there. So what we're going to do is make it clear that any in-kind contribution that's intended for use on the project or proposal being proposed to NSF must be included as part of the facilities, equipment, and other resources section of the proposal, and not as part of current and pending support. What we would want to see in current and pending support regarding in-kind contributions are those in-kind contributions that are not intended for use on the project or proposal being proposed, that require a time commitment. Why do we want those? Again, let's go back to the purpose. We need to know if you have the capacity to carry out the project as proposed. And let me give you an example because that may help explain that. You have received in-kind contributions to support 2 students, not for this project, but to support 2 students for the faculty member on a piece of equipment that someone has made available to you. Well, what we would need to know is you've said, yes, that's going to take me some time because I'm going to have to be working with those students. I'm going to have to be mentoring those students, and that would be identified as part of your current and pending support. So what am I going to cover now? Now I'm going to go over what we are already receiving as some of the current and pending support questions on policy at nsf.gov. And one of them has to do, they said, you didn't mention gifts. So therefore, we're going to have to put that as part of our current and pending support. Well, we're going to cover this in the frequently asked questions that we put out to you shortly. But let me answer that question for you now. There is a very specific government-wide definition of what a gift is. Let me answer it for you in a more basic way. A gift, by definition, is given without expectation of anything in return. There are no obligations. We're just giving you something for the individual that they are going to use in some way. But there are no obligations whatsoever associated with that gift. You are not required to include that. If there are no obligations, no time commitment specifically, you are not required to include that in current and pending support. So again, do I report in-kind contributions that have no associated time commitment? No, because we're going back to the issue of what are we using current and pending support? If there's no time commitment, there's no impact on the capacity, so we will not be requiring you to identify that as well. Do I include in-kind contributions on both current and pending support and facilities, equipment, and other resources? The answer is you don't put them in both places. And so you don't have to duplicate the information in both sections, whether it's in facilities, equipment, and other resources, if it's for that proposal, or if it's for something other than the project being proposed, you don't have to do it in, do it in the current and pending support section, and not in facilities, equipment, and other resources. Another frequently asked question, do I report startup packages or academic year salary in current and pending support? And yes, this will be on the current and pending support frequently asked questions that we put out to you. But let me answer them separately. Do I report startup packages? If it's from your institution, the answer is no. You do not report those as part of current and pending support, period. If they are from another institution and not your institution, the answer would be yes. You would provide those as part, those startup packages as part of current and pending support. So let's answer the second part of the question. Do I include academic year salary in current and pending support? The answer is no. Academic year salary isn't even considered under that rubric. It's not considered current and pending support. So then we're receiving questions about whether or not consulting arrangements are included as part of, or should be included as part of current and pending support. And the answer is, when we put this document out for comment, we included consulting as one of the examples. We have since removed consulting because we have framed what current and pending support in the description in a more precise way. So while current and pending support doesn't any longer specifically mention consulting, what it does require is that all resources made available to an individual in support of and or related to all of his or her research efforts must be provided regardless or whether or not the resources have monetary value. Such support must be provided irrespective of whether it is provided through the proposing organization or is provided directly to the individual. So those and many other frequently asked questions will be included in this document that we disseminate, and we will be letting you know broadly, sending out notices, etc., when these current and pending support frequently asked questions are made available. Collaborative proposals. This is a small detail, but we're getting a lot of questions about this in our outreach, and so we thought it was worth identifying. Collaborative proposals, project titles of proposals from multiple organizations must begin with the word collaborative research, and we want to make that clear. Conference proposals, we've made a number of changes here in the PAP guide, and I'd like to go over what they are, because I think that while they are clarifications, they are important because they more fundamentally get to what the foundation is trying to achieve in conference proposals that are submitted to NSF for support. So we included in the PAP guide the requirement that any conference, that any proposer for a conference have a policy or code of conduct on sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, or sexual assault. And the fact that they have to be disseminated to conference participants both before and at the conference itself. Well, some of the comments that we have received regarding this language have indicated that we've not hit the mark here on fully what our expectations are. So let me give you an example of what the comment said. The comment said, we have a policy or code of conduct, and we have received an allegation. What do we do with it, NSF? Where do we go, and how do we resolve that? Well, we now have expanded this information to really make clear that your complaint resolution process must be identified in the policy or code of conduct that is disseminated to conference participants both before as well as at the conference itself. These next two bullets are things that were inadvertently dropped from the content of a conference proposal, and we simply have added them back, and they're very important things that we really want addressed as part of the conference proposal. The first is that you must include a plan for the recruitment of and support for speakers and other attendees that include participation of underrepresented groups. The second is that you include a description of plans to identify resources for child and other types of family care. Again, these were inadvertently dropped, but we want these included as part of what you provide to NSF, and we wanted to make that clear to you. Responsible and ethical conduct of research. First of all, important, we've added "and ethical" as part of the title of the coverage. Now, some important background is really that the responsible and ethical conduct of research is truly critical for excellence as well as public trust in science and engineering. And the responsible and ethical conduct of research includes not only a responsibility to generate and disseminate knowledge with rigor and integrity, but also a responsibility to conduct peer review with the highest ethical standards, to diligently protect proprietary information and intellectual property from inappropriate disclosure, and finally to treat students and colleagues fairly and with respect. So we really believe that in the education that you're required to provide on the responsible and ethical conduct of research, that this be covered because it's essential in the preparation of our future scientists and engineers. So this is a very important policy statement that we want folks to understand that these things are vital, and so you really should be covering these in the training requirement that we impose. We also have added important coverage of some of the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine reports that have been put out. And Those include fostering integrity in research, sexual harassment of women, climate, culture, and consequences in academic sciences, engineering, and medicine. And finally, reproducibility and replicability in science. And we encourage you to use those as you prepare and develop your training programs in the responsible and ethical conduct of research. One of the things that we added the last time, and I think it's important to highlight, is that we also encourage the training of faculty in the responsible and ethical conduct of research in this section of the PAP Guide. And so I thought it was important to highlight that statement for you as well. Non-discrimination statutes and regulations. We included in the last version of the PAP Guide important information about NSF's policies and statutes and regulations in this area, as well as the ability to come to NSF and tell us about allegations of discrimination. And as part of the communications you've submitted to NSF, you found it hard to find out, how do I do that? Where do I go on your website to provide or communicate with NSF about one of these allegations? And so we've updated our information to make that clearer for you. Similarly, in reporting possible misconduct, we've done the same. We've updated the information on where possible misconduct and activities funded by NSF could be reported. Again, two crucial areas that we want to make sure you understand how to most effectively communicate with the foundation. That is all the formal coverage, and we know that you have a lot of questions out there, and so this is an opportunity to ask those.
Okay, we do have a number of questions, and we likely will not get to all of them, but again, we are compiling them, and we'll be putting out a frequently asked questions document that will include many of these questions that are coming in today. The first one, Jean, is asking about the BioSketch format, and can proposers begin submitting that prior to June 1st?
Absolutely. The format that we are looking at in Science CV is already up to date and fully compliant with the requirements. We have been working hard again with Science CV to make that happen and make sure that you have the opportunity to start using it now and making sure that it's available for your use. So thank you for asking that question, because absolutely you can begin using the Science CV format now. Hopefully you will also be registering and getting a ORCID ID so that you can use that ORCID ID to help you more easily populate the product section of your Science CV submission or BioSketch. So thank you for asking that question. The answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you. So the next question, Jean, perhaps you can speak generally about solicitations. Many solicitations reference the 2019 PAP Guide, but may have deadlines after June 1st. Can you speak a little bit about how that will be resolved?
Absolutely. That's a very, very good question. And we work very hard in the policy office to make sure there is clarity about what version of a PAP Guide that you're required to use, so that you know what the rules of the road are, so that you're not finding out at the last minute, oh, I was supposed to do something differently because the PAP Guide changed. So we know that there are solicitations, and we monitor that very closely. So once we get within 90 days or so, which is our requirement, we have to put out any solicitation at least 90 days before you're required to, before you submit, have to submit your proposal. So we'll be monitoring that and actually changing. From 19-1, you will start seeing 90 days out, you're going to start seeing 20-1. way in advance, and many of them there are deadlines a year out that currently say 19-1. But that will evolve, and you will begin seeing, as time goes on, all of those will be effectively modified to reflect at the appropriate time NSF 20-1. So we will take care of that for you and make sure we clearly articulate which version of the NSF Policies and Procedures Guide you are required to comply with.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, Jean, you mentioned, or you talked about the intellectual merit label being removed from the project description. Is there a similar clarification for the broader impacts label?
There is not, and thank you again for asking that question. You are and so let's take a step back. Many faculty members already put, here's my intellectual merit, put a separate label for broader impacts. That broader impacts label will continue to be validated. We will continue to compliance check that requirement. That requirement has not gone away. We just simply will no longer be compliance checking the label for intellectual merit. If you put it in there, will something bad happen to you? No. Conversely, nothing's going to happen if you do put that label, but you will still be required to have a label for broader impacts within the 15-page or whatever the page limitation is. If a project description is in a solicitation goes beyond 15 pages, you will still be required, and yes, it will be compliance checked, the label for broader impacts.
Thank you. The next question is with regard to synergistic activities.
How did I know I would get one question on synergistic activities? Okay,
it was
go
inevitable.
ahead.
Can you provide an example of what constitutes multiple examples of synergistic
Yes, because we
activities?
thought about that. So we have gotten, okay, I am a reviewer of proposals, and I think that wonderfully demonstrates exactly the synergistic activities that I am providing. And I would like to identify for you that that is one of my synergistic activities. So if you said to us, I review proposals for federal agencies, that is an example of a synergistic activity. If you were to say, I review proposals for NSF, DOE, EPA, NIH, and NASA, that would be the violation we're talking about. The importance there is that your synergistic activity is that you are giving of your time, and that meet to review proposals for a federal agency, and that, or even a nonprofit organization, or whatever it is. It's the review of the proposal that is the example, rather than you have done it for 18 agencies and you want to identify specifically each of those 18 organizations.
Thank you. So the next question is in response to the clarifications surrounding conferences. Do you expect the clarifications about conferences to apply to conferences that were funded prior to June 1st, but will actually occur after June 1st? Well, they're all good questions. So I will quit. They are all good questions. And the answer is, what we will require you to do is for any proposal, any conference proposal submitted on or after June 1st to meet these new requirements. So while we would love you to begin doing these things before then, the requirement applies to conference proposals submitted or due on or after June 1st, 2020. We can't retroactively require you to do something that you clearly were not aware of. Okay. The next question is, will NSF provide proposed resolution processes for code of conduct complaints?
Can you repeat the question?
Will NSF provide proposed resolution processes for code of conduct complaints?
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I understood that. And many organizations, well, in fact, most of if you've already been submitting these, and many of the large professional societies already have standards, policies, or code of conduct on sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, and sexual assault that already address these issues. So NSF would not provide for you what that resolution process is. That is something that you need to develop that best meets the standards or codes of conduct for your particular organization. We will not be providing what specifically those resolution procedures have to be.
Okay, the next question is about subawards. If you include a subaward on an NSF grant, does a faculty member from the institution receiving the subaward need to be included on the proposal as either senior personnel or as a co-PI?
We have been talking a lot about that lately. So the answer is they are to be identified, and there's actually two different ways of doing it, depending on whether you're in Fastlane or research.gov. You're providing what their role is on the project. They could be a co-PI. They can't be the PI because the PI has to be with the organization submitting the proposal. But they could be a co-PI, they could be other senior project personnel, or they could be a contact point. So it depends on what that individual is actually doing. So if the individual is going to be, or they intend for the individual to be a co-PI, they should be identified as the co-PI. And then the organization will ensure that that individual is identified as one of the 4 co-PIs identified on that project. But let me say it differently. There is not always a co-PI from a subawardee institution. That's a different way of saying the same thing. Many people are confused about that. There may be, for example, it's a portion of the research project to carry out testing. The individual it's an important part of the testing. What that organization is doing is very important, and it's part of the research effort. But that individual's role that's going to do that project at the subawardee institution does not rise to the level of a co-PI. So it all depends on what they're really doing, and whatever role they're serving is what role should be put. I'm being told that we have completed our time. I thank you very, very much for your time and attention. We will be looking forward to getting the answers to all of your questions out there as soon as we possibly can. And even before that time, we hope to get you the individual current and pending support FAQs that I have been referring to through a lot of my presentation as soon as we possibly can. So thank you very, very much for your time and attention, and I hope you have a wonderful day.